Hello, it's Nikki Lanier back with HarperSlade at 12. So excited to welcome you back to our wonderful community here. I am so thrilled, so very honored to welcome an amazingly potent, beautiful, brilliant sister, Dr. Pamela Jolly, CEO of Torch Enterprises. Let me tell you a little bit about Pamela Jolly's journey, her experience, her amazing body of work. I'm going to read to you a little bit from her bio, and then we're going to get started with these questions from this prolific soul. All right, here we go. Dr. Jolly, founder and CEO of Torch Enterprises. To this work, Dr. Jolly brings more than 18 years of proven leadership and strategic management experience. Her expertise is focused around legacy wealth creation that passes for generations. Her company, Torch Enterprises, is a strategic firm focused on growing and sustaining minority businesses all over the world. She is skilled at assisting organizations to elevate their standard of business through strategic succession planning and practical application of business and financial acumen. Now, listen, her company has assisted companies, more than 1,000 companies across the world, in helping us to engage capital, raise capital, introduce greater awareness around women and minority who are, of course, desiring to build wealth. She does so with a keen understanding of the importance of ownership as a wealth building strategy. Her extensive background in financial services, strategy, community development, and theology to help entrepreneurs and organizations succeed is well settled. Dr. Jolly has authored the strategic assessment for rebuilding of the greater New Orleans area post-Katrina. And there's more. After much study and research, Dr. Jolly launched The Narrow Road in 2014. And The Narrow Road is a unique development methodology that infuses cultural realities of people of color, something that you all who have tuned in to HarperSlade at 12, you know that this is near and dear to us, understanding the cultural realities that have beset people of color. She infuses that into the education journey that helps to elevate businesses from idea stage to investable stage. She is a sought-after speaker internationally, having lectured and advised businesses and leaders with her reach and her research in such places as Korea, China, Japan, Africa, and the Caribbean. So she has inspired audiences all around the world. Now, Dr. Jolly holds a BS from Hampton University. We share that alma mater. An MBA from the Wharton School of Business, a master's in theology from Boston University School of Theology, and she also holds an EDD, a doctoral degree from the Graduate Theological Foundation. And in her spare time, as though she has any downtime, she's also on the board of Boston University School of Theology, the University of Pennsylvania, where she is the second vice president on the board, Bennett College, many of you know Bennett College in HBCU in North Carolina, Be Me, a national organization of Black leaders, and serves as a senior strategist for the American College of Financial Services. I almost feel like the show could just kind of wrap at this point, Dr. Jolly. I mean, it's just, your potency is unmatched, sister. I'm just so happy to have you on our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki. We are but mirror reflections.
Oh, I'd like to think that's the case. Well, of course, as you may know, with HarperSlade at 12, there's a couple of questions that we want to ask. We want to get some good dialogue going so that the listeners and the viewers of this show leave from this moment with a better understanding of what to do in advancement of racial equity across our country, but as importantly, how to be, like how to think about, how to believe, how to align their choices and behaviors against new normals that really help to activate and amplify people of color. So let's get started.
Okay.
One of the things that we love to do when we first start out is just kind of asking you a little bit about your journey. So our viewers and listeners know well now your academic background, the richness of your professional experiences, but there's also usually a little bit more to that. So because you are so steeped in and so focused on wealth building for Black people specifically, that had to come from somewhere. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey giving rise to this particular area of focus for you?
Sure. Well, family is everything to me. And my family raised me with a couple rules. One, don't embarrass the family, show thyself approved. And so when you look at my background, I learned best in a classroom. So those degrees are important because it gave me structure, because I wanted to come and I just want to talk about it. I actually wanted to be about it.
Mm,
But I also was raised to not leave this world the way I found it. And so when I identify things that trouble me and bother me, quite frankly, things that you hate, I was raised, you were called to change them, to really focus on ways to be able to do it. So when I have been blessed to work in my entire career in financial services, love it. I love the fact that financial services industry is the highest regulated industry in the country. I didn't see enough of us, and not on either side of the table.
right.
Wanted to find a way to be able to change that and to really be able to look at ways in which we could, um, not do better, do more, because there is the aspiration and the desire. I think there's a need for increased level of structure and increased understanding of acumen.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's what I'm finding with so many of our guests on this show. There's just something unmatched about the tethering to home. So we kind of harken back to what we learned in our homes growing up, like as little kids, about values and character and assignment and purpose. That even now, as adults advancing through our careers, we kind of harken back to and rely on. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
can we pinpoint a little bit more about just your focus on wealth? Where why do you focus so much on wealth? Why wealth for Black people?
Well, I look at everything through the lens of business, and the primary purpose of business is to build wealth for its owner. And so, if from my perspective, if you don't have a wealth perspective, you're not really looking at your life, your business, your career, your community through a lens of ownership. And
Yeah.
so, wealth is that constant reminder that there is a primary purpose for why we come together and do things. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the role that legacy plays in the development of wealth. I've heard you say before that it's important to cast a vision that is culturally relevant. Can you say more about that and expand on that?
Sure, and I'd love to link it to what you do, Nikki, because when we think about the advancing of racial equity, I think it's so important to understand that, in my research journey, what I found for my dissertation was the convergence of faith and finance. I interviewed over 7,000 African Americans qualitatively and 45,000 quantitatively. And so some of the patterns that I found is it takes 3 generations to build legacy wealth and only 1 generation to lose it. But when 4 generations come together, the wealth wheel begins to turn. So the role legacy plays in wealth, particularly for African Americans, is that we're the only people in America who were first capital before we ever made capital. So
Yep.
we came over here on the balance sheet of America. We are wealth. And so understanding that it's not wealth as a pursuit that we have to acquire. One, we have to actually assume the position of being
Yeah.
a wealth creator.
That's right.
And that really can frame and really advance and accelerate. But when you tie it to legacy, meaning that it took 3 generations to get to the seat that you live in, it adds another grounding to it. That this isn't just by chance you get a promotion. This isn't by chance that you got that position. You were assigned. This
Mm,
is your role. And so it takes on a new meaning, a deeper meaning, beyond the compensation, beyond the accolades, to the legacy.
gosh, that's so profound. It's so prolific, and it reminds me sometimes when I talk about what I believe firmly to be a God-given assignment around the work with Harper Slade. Something about this feels as though it's an assignment passed to me in utero, as much as it is an assignment that was passed to me from on high. And I love to hear you talk about this work, Dr. Jolly, because it's just you rest your work and your amazing academic credentialing, and of course all these great studies that you have promulgated. But there's just such sincerity and just such relatability to the way that you talk about how important this is and the way that you frame it. Like, because framing is like so important. It's so important, particularly in this work and particularly in work and these kinds of conversations, because we just don't. usually, historically, have not talked about Black and wealth with any level of dexterity in the same sentence. So you do that so beautifully, and I just love to hear you talk more about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, of course, of course. All right, so we talk a lot about the importance of building Black economic fluency and mobility and the middle class. And you have a unique point of view on the pursuit of wealth and the middle class. You talk about we've all inherited a window of time. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, to distill it to the base numbers, you've got 40 years of increasing levels of income to finance and sustain 80 plus years of good living. And if you're strategic about it, you have enough financial wherewithal to be able to transfer wealth to the next generation. And the wealth that you transfer to the next generation is just isn't financial. It's cultural, it's spiritual, it's social.
Mhm.
And so when we think about that level of responsibility in that window of time, we need to take this seriously. So, what I found in my research is that oftentimes middle class could be confused as a lifestyle, but it's actually a number
Yeah.
based on your zip code. And so wealth is not a sea of appearances. Wealth is actually a measure of performance. Your relationship with money, how you define what is important, how your core values mesh with the system for which you govern your life. And so when we start to really understand what middle class really means, that is a position in our economy that influences things.
Yes.
And so as more of us increase our top line, we really need to be conscious of what our bottom line is reflecting, that role, that responsibility, that opportunity.
Yeah. And I
What
think, yeah, I think even particularly so, given what we know is true of 2045, as Black and Brown advance to become the majority, at least in the available workforce, right? I mean, when you say that, that makes it probably even more urgent.
Yes, and also with what's going on in our macroeconomic realities.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, it's not enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am so proud of the number of African Americans that are rising to great heights in corporate America. But
Hmm.
my perspective, my lived perspective, my godfather is Wharton class of 72, the first Black SVP of Bank of America. Wealth, true wealth for me, true legacy wealth is passing on that level of excellence to his children
Yeah.
so that his children are arriving at those heights and it's not the first go round. In
Hmm.
strategy, it says the first mover gets the spoils, the second mover gets the advantage. So while I'm grateful that we have our first, we've been having our first for the last 3, 4 generations. I want the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, so it becomes a standard. I
Amen.
want the
Yes.
succession of the CEO, of a Black CEO, to be succeeded to another Black executive. And not because they're Black, it's because guess what? They've inherited that opportunity and they know what to do with it. So I
Yeah.
want us to look further down the road and be more strategic about. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I've been blessed to work with the American College. We created a Black executive leadership program. We graduated our first cohort. We're working with some of the top
Hmm.
Black executives in financial services. It's hard to even get there. But I
Yes.
think if we can collectively come together about strategies to not just get there, but stay there and to make a place for us there so
Yes.
that it's not just a one off. That's what my
Mhm.
prayer is in our generation.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let me drill a little bit into those strategies. So, how do we go about elevating the standard of business to wealth in Black communities, like the realities of our individual and collective opportunities? How do we start thinking differently about positioning ourselves for exactly the expectation that you have just set forth?
Yeah, so the methodology that I created on the basis of the research that I did for my research for my dissertation was called the narrow road. And narrow
Mhm.
road narrows the road to specific things that you must decide. Wealth is a choice. So how specifically we can do it, you got to take care of the business of you. So, what I tell every Black executive, the biggest gift you can give your children is a healthy retirement. So you can live to see, encourage, mold, and shape that third generation that comes from you.
Mhm.
Um, and it's important because what I find amongst our Black executives, it's that battle. What do I do? Do I focus on my retirement or do I pay for college? Like, what do I do? And maybe that's not where you are. Maybe you have more income than that. But Are you sacrificing your financial health for the sake of the next generation? Because I want you to live to see it. I want the standard to be a standard, which means that whatever standard of living that you've decided is going to be the norm, I want your children and your children's children to build and grow and expand upon that. You know, some of the statistics and data that comes out that 70% of middle class Black families, their children are going to sink below that. We can't move backwards. So it's about instilling the systems, the expectations, it's having the conversations. But what I would like us to do, that's the business of you, for the business of us, let's just not keep it inside our family walls. Let's include our friends and family. Let's make sure that we are sharing the model of wealth that we are building while we're building it, so that it becomes as normal as us going to Martha's Vineyard, as normal as us going to a vacation or hanging out or having a good time with our friends. Let's let our wealth plans and what our strategies are to make sure that our children do better than we do be a part of the everyday, the standard.
Right. What do you see as maybe a couple of the impediments around that? I mean, do you see it more as behavioral based, values based, structural issues? I'm just wondering what might be some of the reasons why we can't get there, or it's harder for us to get there, or more difficult for us to get there.
So in my research, I found 4 roadblocks: trust, capital, leadership, and accountability. Trust was the number one roadblock. And what I found when you data mine 5 terabytes of data as I have, what underlies trust is a lack of organization and priorities. You can't trust everybody with everything. No man. I mean, God says, trust no man, trust God. But literally, you got to have a set of priorities.
Yeah.
You know, and some people, oh, I don't want to share my financial stuff with so and so and so and so. Okay, well, those aren't the people that you have the full out financial conversation, but you need to have something so that we are all moving forward down that road to wealth together. In terms of the capital, you know, as someone who loves advising businesses, raising capital for businesses, you know, often people believe that access to capital is our number one issue. I don't agree. I think business acumen and stewardship of the capital that we have is really important. You know, for me, there's 2 types of capital categories: debt and equity. Debt is a different relationship than equity.
Yeah.
Equity requires a more intimate relationship with the person that's investing in you. Debt is very straightforward. All of them require a certain level of financial and business performance. This is a relationship that passion doesn't get into it. It's actually, there's no passion in that transaction, if you will. And so I think it's really, really important that we prioritize what is necessary. Some of us can't write a check for people, but we can pick up a phone and change the game for somebody. That's the same level of investment for some. You know, many of our younger people who are looking to raise capital will call me and say, Dr. Jolly, I see that you know so-and-so. Could you call them for me? I could, but I need to see your financials.
I love it. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much for all of that. It's beautifully comprehensive. And I see why now. I mean, I've always known, but it's even more acute to me why your business is flourishing, why you are, and your potency in working with your clients all over the globe and helping to advance new ideals and a deeper understanding of the relationship between the outcomes that we all want for our lives, for our homes, for our families, for our communities, and for this world, what that has to do with the choices that we're making right now as we're building our businesses. So thank you for the clarity around that. All right, so tell me, Dr. Jolly, what's next for you? What are you most excited about with Torch Enterprises, or maybe for you personally? What's up next?
So last week, I launched the 2nd edition of my first book, The Narrow Road.
Yes,
So really excited about getting this book to a larger audience. In support of this book, I'm launching the Wealth Finishing School in November. And a lot of what we talked about today, Nikki, I want people to build a standard for themselves and expand it through their friends, their family, and their community. And so that's what the Wealth Finishing School is all about. And I think the other thing that's exciting for me is, you know, the pandemic was a very intense time for us all. What I was grateful about is, you know, I work right now in 7 cities across the country, and it intensified the work and the meaning of the work. So I'm doing an amazing project in Louisville, two projects in Louisville, doing an amazing project in Minneapolis, continuing the amazing work that I'm doing with American College. I love what I get to do because we are building strategic pathways for Black and Brown people to advance in corporate, in personal, in society. And we're doing it from an entrepreneurial perspective as well as a corporate perspective. I sit in between. I'm so grateful to be Parakletos too, alongside corporate America and alongside the entrepreneurial world, which is seeking to advance greater heights. And so you've got people wanting to acquire businesses now. I believe in growth through acquisition. But you also have Black leaders really building deep, meaningful relationships with non-Black stakeholders and having the difficult conversations so that sustainable, well-funded initiatives can move forward.
That's it.
So I'm excited about doing more of that. I'm excited about really building more relationship and having greater conversations with larger groups of people about the important role that legacy plays in wealth.
Thank you. Awesome, awesome. And listen, because you love your work so much, this country and our world is better for it. Thank you so much for your time today. I mean, as a fellow Hampton grad, I'm just so proud of all that you are and all that you have contributed, everything that you deposit into this world, into our community. I sit here in Louisville, as many of our viewers know, and so I know firsthand the bounty of your work and your potency. I have personally benefited from it as I've looked at relying on you and helping me to think through building my own business. So I thank you for that. Thank you for your time today, Dr. Jolly. Very happy to have had you and so excited to have you as a part of this growing, amazing community to help amplify and activate the potency of Black and Brown people. So thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of HarperSlade at 12. We're most thankful to have had you engaged with us throughout all of these amazing talks, and certainly with Dr. Jolly most recently. So stay tuned for more. Continue to watch out for our wonderful messages via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Continue to follow us on all your social media platforms. We are excited to be in Congress with you and excited to be connected in this work. Take care.